guys, welcome to Books and Blue Stockings. I'm Betty Bookworm and I read way too much into things. 2 years ago when I started this channel, I talked about how less than great books can sometimes be comparable to less than great relationships. And since I'm dedicating this Books and Blue Stockings month to self-love, I think it's important to point out that less than great relationships can be detrimental to the self-love and self-worth of all parties involved. And sometimes I wonder if literary, cinematic, and even theatrical media caused us all to have unrealistic and in some cases unhealthy expectations of what relationships are supposed to be. And now I'm thinking back to all the sexy romantic leads that I, as a primarily heterosexual young girl, grew up watching and wondering, were these guys really worthy of my admiration? So I have compiled a list of less than great fictional boyfriends that I and maybe some of you grew up idolizing. And before you bitch at me about less than great girlfriends, keep in mind that I wrote this video from my perspective. I promise you there are so many articles listing off shitty fictional girlfriends. I once read an article that said that Sloane from Ferris Bueller's Day Off wasn't a good girlfriend because she didn't have big boobs. That was something that I read with my eyeballs. Number 5. Now, before I start, I just want to say I'm sorry, and my heart is breaking simply by uttering this, but it really needs to be said. Wesley from Princess Bride. I know! He's a roguish sword fighter and a charming pirate captain with eyes like the sea after a storm, and he's played by Cary Elwes. But he exhibits some pretty crappy behavior. For instance, after he frees Buttercup from Vizzini, he basically tortures her emotionally, telling her that he's the Dread Pirate Roberts and that her one true love is dead. Then he threatens physical violence against her. Fun fact, in the book, he actually hits her. Our hero, everyone. I know in the grand scheme of things, it's not really a big part of the story, but it doesn't make it okay. And after all that bullshit, he has the nerve to ask, "Why didn't you wait for me? You were dead. Not even death can stop true love." Well then, if death can't stop true love, why would a sham marriage to an evil prince stop true love? It is stated in the book and in the movie that Buttercup could not say no to Humperdinck, and Wesley still gives her shit for it. I put him so low on the list because he does do quite a few redeemable things. Saves Buttercup from the lightning sand, spares the lives of Inigo and Fezzik, later befriending them, and defeats the bad guy with a severely articulate monologue. But we still need to acknowledge the emotional manipulation and the hitting. Hitting is not okay. In the immortal words of comedian Jackie Cation, there is no hitting. Number 4, Raoul and Phantom from Phantom of the Opera. Yes, they are sharing a spot because frankly I find them both reprehensible. Though honestly, I'm more attracted to Phantom than Raoul. I don't know what that says about me. Phantom is on the list for several obvious reasons. Extortion, murder, kidnapping, murder, implied hypnotic molestation, attempted murder. But let's talk about the not-so-obvious choice, Raoul. Raoul is a condescending, spoiled, rich douchebag. The first thing he says when he sees Christine for the first time since they were children is, "You're not at all a bit the gawkish girl I thought you were." Bro. You're negging her during her operatic singing debut? Let's not forget he basically uses her as bait to catch his romantic rival. It makes you wonder, has he concocted this convoluted plan to set Christine free from the Phantom's machinations? Or is this just a dick measuring contest? But to be honest, I'm not going to spend much time talking about these two because I have a feeling we're going to be talking about them more later on this month. Number 3. Scott Pilgrim from Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. On the surface, Scott seems like a pretty endearing guy. He plays video games, he's in a band, he has a hilarious roommate. But those are literally his only not horrible qualities. He is so whiny and fickle. He hurts or cheats on almost every girlfriend he has. And he rationalizes his shitty behavior by blaming his ex-girlfriend Envy for breaking his heart. And let's think about this for a second. I mean, really think about this. At the end of the movie, he has to fight Nega Scott, who he describes as a nice guy. If Nega Scott, basically anti-Scott, is a nice guy, then what does that make real Scott? In summation, Scott Pilgrim, much like the brand of Coke he drinks, is a 0. That may be the worst joke that I have ever written. Sponsor me, Starbucks. And I would like to add, yes, I know the movies are different from the comics. I have not read the comics yet. They are on my to-read list. I based this segment of the video mainly off of the movie. Number 2, Mr. Rochester from Jane Eyre. He locked his mentally ill wife in an attic. Enough said. He's an awful piece of shit. His only redeeming quality is that his screwed up relationship with his aforementioned wife, Bertha, inspired Jean Rhys to write the novel Wide Sargasso Sea, which in turn inspired the perfect angel herself, Stevie Nicks, to write a song of the same name. Mr. Rochester sucks. Moving on. And the number 1 less than great fictional boyfriend is, of course, Edward freaking Cullen. Now, some of you may be upset that I didn't include Christian Grey on this list. Well, I didn't because Christian and Edward are pretty much the same person. 50 Shades of Grey started off as a Twilight fanfiction, and I am going to keep repeating that fact because I worry that if we forget history, we are doomed to repeat it. Now, I know I've talked about him before, but let's discuss the sparkly uselessness that is Edward Cullen. Edward Cullen spends an entire class period contemplating murdering Bella Swan, stalking her, gaslighting her, telling her that he was standing next to her when Tyler's van almost crushed her when she knew, in fact, he wasn't, counts as gaslighting. Breaks into her house to watch her sleep, emotionally neglects her, abandons her, infantilizes her, damages her truck so she won't see her friend, goads her into marrying him even though she is only 18 and has expressed a disinterest in marriage, and tries to get her to have an abortion even though she doesn't want to have one. And even all that aside, my biggest problem with Edward is that he's marketed to impressionable teenage girls. Christian Grey is marketed to adults. I mean, that doesn't make his actions okay, but a grown-up person with life experience would be less likely to put up with his shit. Edward is a controlling, manipulative creep, but he's framed like a broody, soulful lover who knows what's best for Bella. Teenagers who are forming their opinions on romance and intimacy might have a warped sense of relationships due to carelessly written characters like Edward. And before you get on me saying things like, it's just a fictional story, well, our lives are shaped by fictional stories. Grimm's fairy tales, Disney, Marvel, DC. Some of these characters that were important to us as children can stay with us throughout our whole lives. My fear is that Edward might stay with some people, and they may seek out emotionally manipulative relationships. Did Stephenie Meyer get more hate than she deserved? Yeah, definitely. But she still needs to own up to the fact that she wrote a potentially dangerous character and framed him as the perfect specimen of male. We as a society really need to do better by our young adult readers. There you have it, folks. 5 fictional dudes that I used to lust over that I really shouldn't have. But I stand here, an older, wiser woman who will never again fantasize about dangerous heartthrobs or bad boy villains ever again. Damn.